everyone, welcome back to alkaline hydroxide, and today we are doing education part 2 in the GPO series. So once again I'll flash the full list of topics here, and also the timings for today. So are you ready? Let's start. So first off, we'll be looking at online learning. Now this is a particularly significant thing to be looking at because, well, there were literally 3 whole weeks of HBL during like the circuit breaker time, I guess. And it seems like for the time being, it would be much better if we could have more of our learning online. So how feasible is this? Well, there are a few factors to consider, I guess. So first one would be that there are like the age of the students in the sense. So if you actually went to watch that CNA video I was talking about the last time, I'm not sure which one, but a few episodes ago, you would have noticed that in that video when they did the experiment, the youngest kids had, or more specifically presented, the most trouble. Well, they couldn't really focus and ended up not really wanting to do work, and they were kind of like, oh, it's a holiday, that kind of thing. But this changed when the teacher actually came online, and then they had like the group video call kind of thing. Basically, when that happened, they were more focused in a sense. So in theory, it is possible to have some. By some, that means not all the time, because there are some reasons for that as well. So just like some, or at least more than usual in that sense, online learning, if the teacher is present throughout the entire duration, especially for the younger students. For the older ones, they can make do with just the materials that they require for the day and whatever activity that they need to do, like the homework and all that. So yeah, basically in other words, the amount of time that can be spent on online learning increases with the age of the students. So for example, universities are able to, like, they can literally have most, if not all, of their classes on, and even like some of the quizzes online. That's how much you can trust the university students as compared to, okay, I mean, I'm not sure you can really trust them to, completely not cheat, but in a sense they can do quizzes online. And the reason behind this is pretty obvious. Well, older students can adapt and so-called focus. I say this in quotation marks because by focus, you're just like, at least they're just gonna be sitting there and actually looking at the screen for that matter, but I'm not sure whether we are actually focused. But we can do that better than some of the younger ones. So apart from the age of the students, you could also consider those who have special needs or disabilities. Of course, this is a very small group of students, so in theory, if you really don't, like, if you cannot do online lessons for them, it is still possible to go with normal lessons. But in terms of whether you can do online lessons, well, it could be possible if, especially those who have more mild disabilities or those who can actually focus on an online lesson in a sense. For special needs, I'm not really sure how the dynamic is, because I've not really interacted with a lot of special needs children, and I'm not really sure what are the factors that are required to, help them stay focused on an online lesson. But for disabilities, I think it'll be easier to explain in a sense, because generally, if, let's say, for example, if you have hearing problem, online lessons might be beneficial in some way because you can actually increase the volume and you don't have to like ask the teacher to repeat it. You can just like increase the volume. But at the same time, the online aspect might decrease the quality of the audio. So it really is in a sense, in my opinion, is actually a little bit better, but not really the best lah. And for those who have troubles with their vision instead, well, I guess it depends on what's being shown online. Like if they're showing PowerPoints and stuff, usually the PowerPoints might be much clearer on their own computer as compared to on a projector or something. Or if there's like a color vision problem, it's the same problem whether it's online or in real life. It's up to the teachers to realize whether their children, like whether their students have like color blindness, and adjust for that accordingly. So yeah, that's really there's a lot of things to take note of before you have the class. Like the teacher needs to know their students well so that they can have a effective class online. So apart from the students themselves, another factor is of course the type of lesson being done. So things like labs and practicals, they obviously can be done online because you need access to the physical equipment and stuff like that. Of course, if some of you might have seen this video on like the robots that can actually do lab work, but that's meant for, people who do experiments on their own and they have like their own fancy bio lab and all that stuff. So they can use the robot to do it for them. But what I'm actually referring to is the lab that are required for A levels or O level exams. And in those cases, you definitely need access to the stuff that you need to use in order to do your lab work and get experience using those things and actually knowing what to do. And without that, you can really it will be quite hard to do as well in the exam as compared to those who actually got the experience using the stuff and practicing using the equipment there. So those things can be done online, but most of the other lessons can in theory be done online. Even things like team discussions and stuff is very possible online and arguably even better. And this can be done with stuff like breakout groups. Like Zoom has breakout groups, Microsoft Teams has got that same function as well. And these breakout groups can actually be better than having a discussion in a real classroom because they actually don't have that ambient noise from the other groups, and they kind of, since you're the only one in that particular thing, you don't have anywhere else to look. You have to look at your teammates and talk to them and discuss with them. So there's a bit more motivation to actually have a discussion, or at least you're kind of more forced to discuss. Or maybe not, you might still just end up chit-chatting your way, but if you get the idea, it's a little bit better. So yeah, the only real problem is getting students to actually do stuff during the lesson. So this is more of, this once again related to knowing the students well in the sense. So for people who are more responsible, okay, maybe let's not talk about age here now, let's just look at more responsible students. They are willing to actually attend the lessons, be present, and do the materials that they're supposed to do. If it's more of a HBL style of doing things, just do the homework. But some people will just take it as an excuse to basically bail out and not actually do anything. And even if they go and attend the lesson, they may just off their camera and not actually be listening to the lesson. But at the same time, this could be a good thing for people who need to do other things during the lesson in order to focus. So like if you are the kind of person who likes to multitask per se, like with the quotation marks multitask, or if you need to sit in the most comfortable position in order to focus, or if you need to fidget around with all the random things on you, like all the stationery and whatnot, your fidget spinner, whatever you have, if that helps you to focus, that is us. So for those people, it might actually be good. Yeah, like seriously, because in a real lesson maybe they'll just not be able to focus at all. They'll just be like super fidgety and not be able to do stuff. But maybe online they can do whatever they want because they can just off their video and do whatever they want as long as they're listening to it. It's good, right? So that would be more conducive for them in terms of the lesson, and it will give them more motivation to actually attend and focus during the lesson. So it kind of depends on the students as well. So apart from the students and the type of lesson, another factor is the availability of devices to students. Yeah, this is actually a very important thing because most of us take like our laptop or our iPad for granted, but there are many students who don't have one of those things. And even during HBL, it was quite hard to meet the demand. Like even after the schools tried to loan out as many devices as they could, and even other external groups tried to help donate laptops and iPads, it was still hard to meet the demand. There were still people who needed those devices. So if you want to be sustainable with having like regular online learning or HBL for that matter, we need to either ensure that like how everyone is able to go to school, right? Like everyone has the like they're able to go to school and they don't need to pay too much money for it, especially if they're citizens for that matter. Like everyone should also have access to the device at a low cost, especially those who need the financial, like who are not so financially well, and they need they need the access to the device. You must be able to give it to them. So the problem is this is actually kind of hard to do, as I just mentioned. Not sure how it's gonna really happen, but if the government can figure out something, that'll be great. And I guess it could be done maybe through a donation method, or through like just like how we get masks for everyone in Singapore. Maybe you can get some generic laptop or something. I'm not sure how that works, but something that can be used exclusively for HBL, that could work too. Yeah, we have to figure that out. So apart from devices, another thing that could be an important thing is Wi-Fi. I know there's a lot of public Wi-Fi, but there could be people who don't have really good Wi-Fi, and that would be quite problematic for video conferencing, because videos do take up more RAM and Wi-Fi and all that stuff. So if your Wi-Fi is lagging, it may not be your lesson won't go very well in a sense. So Wi-Fi is another thing that we need to figure out, like how everyone can get access to enough quality Wi-Fi in a sense. So yeah, so apart from that, like before I move on, I know that there are, like in normal HBL, those who aren't able to use a laptop have to come to school. But of course, in situations like pandemics and all that, it will be better to make sure, like, it will be better if people don't have to come to school in order to do the HBL. So we need to figure out a solution that involves the device rather than just asking them to come to school in order to do it. Yeah, that's basically the so-called postscript for this part. Okay, so now let's look at the other effects of online learning. So this mostly health issues, in the sense of health issues. So what are the health effects of online learning? Well, in terms of sleep, actually, maybe online learning, like in a fully, so now we look at a fully online learning system. So for the health effects, we'll look at a fully online learning system. So in terms of sleep, you probably might get more sleep, because if you're doing online learning, you actually don't have to go to school, you don't have to come back from school, like you don't need that time, you can save that time. And since technically in a fully online system, you may not really have CCAs and other things, so you have more time to do your work and you have more time to sleep. But there are other issues that might come with doing online learning. First off, there are people who end up getting headaches. For example, from looking at the computer for a really long time, your eyes will get tired and your brain will also get tired. So it's possible that some people get headaches when they do online learning. But at the same time, some may prefer this to the fact that they have to wear masks right now for 5 to 6 hours at the minimum in a non-aircon classroom. Well, that already sounds so painful, like seriously. And if you end up breathing in all the stuff that's in the mask, like the fibers and stuff, it really doesn't make you feel very good after a few days of wearing it continuously. So yeah, in a way, online learning might be better to that. Okay. So what would be the worst effect though? Like, if you really, really are against it, what would be the biggest reason that you can give? Well, the worst effect might be the lack of real place, real time interactions. Of course, in an online lesson, you do see people's faces if they're on the video, and you do get to talk to people. But you only really get to do the actual lesson. Like, if your lesson is only meant for the lesson itself, you don't really get to chit chat or do other things during the lesson. Because in a real school day, there's a difference. Like, there's lessons, there's recess, there's lunch break, there's CCA, there's like even the assembly time, which is also a time to chit chat before the assembly, I guess. So all these periods of time are not really included in the online lessons, like a fully online system, in the sense like the HBL system. In fact, all the recess and everything is done by yourself in your house, which honestly is kind of boring. And apart from recess, CCA is super, super important, as we mentioned in the first part. And missing those things, not very fun, like if you miss it, then you cannot really, you generally just, your day is more of just doing work rather than play. You don't get to do an equal amount of both. And this would be kind of detrimental to mental health unless students find their own hobbies to do. But hobbies but having a hobby is one thing. You need to interact with other people. And it's quite hard to interact real time with, like, you know, in a real location with other people unless you have your CCAs and your recess and all that stuff. So yeah, that's really the most, like, the biggest effect that can come out from HBL. So that's why in reality you wouldn't want to have a fully online system in a normal case scenario. You only really want to be doing that unless you have, like, when you have a pandemic or something really extreme going on. Yeah, so that's the idea of that. But are there any other effects? Well, I don't know. Like this, I'm mostly gonna be talking about health effects, because yeah. I think the other effect would be that people actually get to learn the online tools earlier, and more people get access to knowing how to use these online tools. So, because otherwise, not everyone will know how to use it. And by knowing how to use it, they can then be more effective in the future when they go to work. They know how to use online tools for their work and for business and all kinds of other things. And socially, maybe the students that will eventually become more internet savvy and more they're more willing to do things online, which is already the case. People are more willing to do their social things online rather than in real person. So yeah, that could be another effect of online learning. So apart from all of this, what are the other issues that challenge online learning? Okay, so last time I mentioned something about a sandbox and all. When I mentioned the CNA video, I was talking about a sandbox and things like that. So what I was talking about was that the main problem is that some of the younger ones, like the younger students, may accidentally access adult material while searching for something much more innocent on Google, or accidentally click some random link which will bring them to some random place, and then they accidentally end up in trouble. So of course it's not really their fault, but it is an issue nevertheless, right? So how do we prevent this? There are two things that we can do in a sense. The first one would be to teach them where they shouldn't go. Like, you must do that early itself, like tell those kids, if you see this site and it has these kind of weird images on it, please don't go there. Just close the link and go back. That kind of thing. You tell them where not to go and what not to click. But that can be a little bit hard because there are too many different possible examples of what you shouldn't go, like what you shouldn't click or where you shouldn't go. So what's the other option? The other option is to have something like a sandbox or a similar security system for them to use. So if you don't remember what I told last time, basically a sandbox is like this contained system. So this system will have all of the apps that you require for HBL. And in order to access that system, like once you log into that system, you cannot go out unless you have a password to go out into the other apps. So a kid will only be able to access the things within the sandbox, and they cannot go and access Google or YouTube, for example. So the problem with this though is you need to access Google and YouTube sometimes. Like maybe the activity requires you to go and search for information online, or maybe the teachers give them some YouTube links to watch. Then what will the students do? Oh, that's a problem, I guess. But at least for maybe videos and things, it is possible to upload the videos into their learning app, for example. Or even if you're using something like Microsoft Teams, you can actually upload the videos there. The only real problem would be trying to figure out how to include the search engine function in that whole system. So I guess that's the main challenge for implementing a sandbox. So I guess maybe instead we could have a separate thing to help ensure that when you search on Google, you don't accidentally end up in some very suspicious, confusing location. Yeah, that's something that we need to figure out. So yeah, we'll look at all of that. So now let's look at the next topic, aka the second topic here, which is the role of platforms like Reddit and YouTube. So why is this topic here? This just seems like a very random thing to be putting in here. Well, the thing is they're also online things, so they would kind of go well with the first topic, which is also online related. And the other reason why I put this in is because people don't really talk about them that much. And I use those two websites a lot. Like I go to Reddit all the time and I go to YouTube all the time, and I think I can tell a lot about them. So I'm just gonna go through Reddit and YouTube, and also I'll be talking a bit about places like Coursera and other online courses kind of websites. Okay, so first off, Reddit. So in Reddit, the idea of Reddit is that it is a forum-based website. So for Singapore education itself, there is a forum called SG Exams, and in there are people who put posts and people who reply to the post in a sense. And the thing about Reddit is that you can ask about like so-called anything per se lah. To some extent, you have a little bit more freedom on what you can ask on Reddit, and people help. You can either help your peers, or you can help your juniors, or you help anyone for that matter by answering other people's questions in Reddit, or giving them certain advice or anything, literally whatever is relevant to the post that they've put. And the thing about Reddit is that everyone is anonymous. You don't need to put your actual name there. You can, like for example, I'm alkaline hydroxide, right? So that's not my name. That's the name of my channel. So it is pretty anonymous in a sense. So in Reddit, I can be pretty anonymous in a sense, and I can just, and it feels a bit more private in a sense. Like it doesn't feel too problematic. You can, like, that's why there's this extra freedom on what you can say, and it gives you more confidence to, maybe if you have any difficulties when you're studying, or people who feel like, oh no, I'm really bad at this subject, they might feel too embarrassed to go and ask their actual friends or their teachers. So instead they can go in Reddit and be anonymous about it and say, oh, I'm having difficulty with this thing, or literally everything is a mess or something like that. They can say that, and people are there to help them. So really is the best place for them to actually go and voice out their concerns, and they can do it confidently and without any embarrassment. And some people may also have certain doubts which they feel might be a little bit too stupid to ask to their friends, so they can just ask it on Reddit and hope that without really feeling embarrassed about it. So the idea of anonymity is quite important in Reddit. And the whole system is quite a good system to some extent, because there's this community spirit in Reddit itself. And even though there is a so-called Reddit points, aka karma, well, that system might be a little bit incentivizing. Like you may want to get more karma and not end up getting downvoted by people. But at the same time, people really reply not for the karma, but for goodwill. They're doing it out of goodwill. They want to help other people, and yeah, something about the anonymity kind of helps too. So like it feels a bit more like you're more motivated to go and help people, or just give your advice without feeling too worried about what exactly you say. As long as the advice makes sense, you get upvoted. If it doesn't, it's just get downvoted, or you can just delete it in the sense. So that's the great thing about Reddit. It's a really great place to ask about literally anything and get help from other people who you may not even know in real life. So yeah, that's about Reddit, I guess. And about YouTube. So in YouTube, well, of course for Reddit and YouTube, I'm referring to that they're used in educational matters because I know Reddit also has its own problems. Like sometimes someone might say something good, but people may downvote it because it's like the crowd sentiment. But at the same time, this system may help you see which advice is so-called good advice or bad advice. Like the general sentiment is that if people like it, they'll upvote it, or if they don't like it, they will downvote it. So there is both a good thing and a bad thing to that system. Yeah, so that's Reddit. So now let's look at YouTube. In YouTube, you have videos about anything and everything. I think we all know that already. There's a lot of videos in YouTube. I don't even know what that number is. You can probably search it up yourself. Okay, so, and you can watch and rewatch that video as many times as you want at whatever speed as you want. If you need captions, you can even on them and then use the closed captions to aid your understanding. Or you can even find like people who have two different opinions on the same topic, or people who have two different ways of explaining the same topic, and you can watch both those videos and then see which one you prefer, and things like that. So there's so many things you can do using YouTube, and it is super free. That's the main point, it's free. And at the same time, for the people who are posting videos on YouTube, there's a lot of incentive. If they are popular enough, they get money from the ads and everything. And there's also that whole community aspect, just like in Reddit. You have like a whole group of people who like this certain subject or topic, and they're all willing to listen to your videos. That really makes, like, it kind of motivates you to post more videos on that topic. And it is also a useful place for teachers because they sometimes use YouTube videos in their lessons itself. And for example, if you want a visual way to explain the thing to your students but you don't really know how to do it yourself, but there's a video that does it perfectly, then you use that instead of trying to explain it yourself and hoping that they will understand it. Yeah, so YouTube is a great place for educational content. The only problem is sometimes, as with information, there's also a lot of misinformation. So sometimes you might accidentally clamor into a video that's telling the wrong things, or not really telling what you're supposed to be listening to. And that requires a bit of know-how and like critical thinking, in the sense you need to know what you're watching, or you need to know how trusted that person is. Like if you can watch a few videos and see how people react to this person and how you feel about watching that person, and if you trust them and you feel like the general sentiment is good too, you can continue to trust them. If not, you probably shouldn't be watching their videos, and you should go and watch someone else's videos instead. Yeah, that kind of thing. So yeah, both Reddit and YouTube are great places. Like they're great resources for getting your doubts cleared, or learning something that maybe even outside your curriculum and things like that. But at the same time, you must be a little bit clever in navigating those two places, and have a bit more know-how and critical thinking when you approach these places. Don't just be influenced too easily by any opinions that you see, but instead think for yourself, decide which opinion you actually side with, or which one you feel is more evidenced or more sensible in the sense. So yeah, that's about Reddit and YouTube. And I'll just end this off with one last thing, which is places like Coursera, basically online courses. So in terms of online courses, what are the things that you can talk about? Well, first of all, you have the fact that you're doing literally self-learning online. Like it's both online learning and self-learning both in one go. And there's also this idea of, usually in Coursera, you have this thing of you do the test and then you have to review a bunch of other people's tests. So there's that whole thing as well, which means the teachers don't actually have to be there. Like the students literally do everything on their own, and that is pretty sustainable in a way, because the teachers don't have to keep coming again and again to give new lessons or to reiterate the same thing again and again. And this allows like more people to access the lesson, because you can do it any time of the year, you can do it from anywhere in the world, and that is probably one of the good things about online courses. But the thing is, some of these courses are free and some of them are paid courses. So like in some cases, people may not really agree with the fees that the courses have, because usually, for example, Coursera, they have a fee for getting a certificate. If you don't want the certificate, you can do it for free, but you won't get any certificate, or you may not even be able to do the tests or the quizzes that are there in the particular course. And apart from but of course there are some exceptions to this rule. Like for example, recently they had quite a few courses made free just because of the pandemic, and it was kind of linked to your university directly, so you can even use the courses to get credits in your university, or AUs if you talk about here in Singapore, you can get AUs, and that is great, right? You can literally fulfill an AU by doing an online course. Yeah. So, I was talking about the certificate just now, and one very interesting question would be to ask, are these certificates valid or not? Well, like, can you trust someone who did an online course versus an actual in-person course? So my opinion is yes, I think the certificate is somewhat valid because even in in-person courses in universities, most of the time you're just getting some content and you just have to revise the content and then do an exam. It's literally the same thing online. You're just doing the same thing but in an online platform. The only real concern would be about the test itself, which I will come to in a second. But the thing is, people do learn the same way. They just get the information, they get to read it on their own, and they do a quiz based on the information that they read, which is pretty much the same as a university course. Only thing in a real person university course, you have a teacher telling the information to them first, and yeah, they just get the PowerPoint instead. And that's pretty much the same thing. There's nothing much of a difference between the two. So people really do learn from these courses. It's the same amount of learning as from a normal traditional university course. So in terms of the test though, there is that thing where there's this concern that people might cheat on the test. Of course, if you're a honest person, you probably won't be doing that, but there could be people who'll be cheating on the test, and yeah, that's not great, right? If someone cheated on the test, there are apparently policies to report them, but do we really know? Do we really know who cheated and who didn't? But apart from cheating, another thing about some of the quizzes is that you can redo the quiz. So since the quiz literally has the same questions for the most part, you can, once you figure out that, oh, this answer is wrong and this answer is wrong, therefore this answer is correct, then maybe in that case you may not really learn stuff. You may just be, trying to finish the quizzes quickly so that you can get a certificate that you can proudly display on your LinkedIn. Oh well. Yeah, so there is a little bit of concern based on whether the online learning is actually quite legit. But for the most part, they're quite valid and legit. It's just that there are these small concerns of whether people whether people have integrity when they're doing the course, or whether they actually learn when they redo the quiz 2 or 3 times. Yeah, so that's pretty much it for those online courses and things like that lah. Of course, I think another thing about the online courses is whether you should do it if you have the opportunity to. Well, sometimes you would do it if you manage to get credits from it, but some people may do courses that don't have credits in it, or they may do the courses without getting the certificate, and that's because it allows them to get certain skills that they otherwise wouldn't get from school. So that's kind of a good thing about online courses. You can learn things that you otherwise don't get to learn, and you can do something that's in your interest. But even then, there's a little bit of a limitation. Not all the topics in the world are there on the online courses. For that, you have to go to YouTube instead. That's why YouTube is great. Because you can literally watch anything you want on YouTube. Yeah. So that's pretty much it. I don't really have anything else to say about these online tools. But of course, the online platforms, like these websites, are quite useful in their own way, and a lot of things can be learned from these places, and they exist for a good reason, and they're utilized quite well. So that's it. I'm done with this particular part of the episode, and in a sub conclusion, in the sense, there are many things that you need to consider if you want to actually have more online learning in the future. And the other part would be that online platforms can be a supplement to online learning in the sense, and it's up to us to use it wisely and practice some self-restraint on the internet itself. Yeah, that's about it. I'm done. So if you found this video useful, please press the like button and subscribe. And with that, do look forward to part 3 and part 4, which will come in the next few days. And with that, I would like to say thank you and bye.